Welcome back. The Daily Graphic says PRC starts review of utility tariffs. Registrar all names. That's the ministry directs births and deaths registry. And Martin Amidu faces Parliament on February 13. Daily Heritage this morning says Daily Minister orders registrar to lift ban on names such as Nana Ni Jr. 2 confesses, 10 plead not guilty. And PWDs, or persons with disability, get discriminated against when searching for jobs. That's according to the Daily Heritage. The finder says 23.1 million below SDG standards water. Ghana needs to invest $11.3 billion in 8 years to close deficit, and Bintaliga residents share water with animals at 120 cedis per month. And the Daily Statement says residents battle regimental over suspicious demolition letter, and more pregnant women test positive to HIV. China cited in AU espionage, but AU-China denies story. And Daily Guide says Nana mourns Hugh Masekela. Baumia returns Friday. Ama on rampage, and 2 cop killers convicted, 10 suspects caged. The Ghanaian Times, which will be a final one, says birth death registry makes U-turn on titles prefixes. VIP expected back home by weekend, majority leader. And doctor shortage hits northern region. No doctor accepted postings in the area in 2017. My guest this morning is the Honorable Theophilus Etecha, is a former member of Parliament for the Ablekuma Central Constituency. Chief, good morning, and Happy New Year to you. How are you doing? Great. And the Deputy Attorney General, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, brother.
How are you doing? Happy New Year
By
to
His
you.
grace, thanks.
New Year resolutions?
Well, to see a very prosperous Ghana, very peaceful Ghana, and very lively Ghana.
Interesting there, though. I've been, as a matter of interest, first before we move on to the topics, I've been having conversations about the Gitmo 2 because you're here as Deputy Attorney General. I quickly want to pick your thoughts on those. We understand that they are working. What kind of work are they permitted to do in this part of time? What law perhaps permits them to do that?
Well, first of all, let me say a very good morning to your cherished viewers, and a very good morning to the good people of the Timpani constituency, a very good morning to the good people of the Upper East and the North as a whole, and a very good morning to all our viewers. Now, first of all, you talking about the fact that you have information that they are working. I do not know whether you have a very definite confirmation by your own investigation, an independent inquiry, whether indeed they are doing that work that you have heard they are doing. If you don't, then I will let it. I would say that it remains in the realms of speculation.
Tell us, are they working?
And to remain at that. That I cannot confirm to you.
Okay.
That I cannot confirm to you. But what I can say is that if they are working, then it means that they may have gone through the processes of registration and etc. They may have gone through work permit and acquisition at the appropriate state institutions to be able to allow them to do that. But I cannot, as I speak, confirm whether or not they are working.
I see. But we were told that a certain stipend was afforded them as at the time we were doing the swap. How much of that money is left?
Well, again, I cannot confirm that.
You have no information?
Yes. And I would not like to conjecture anything at all. What is very important is that whatever the legal issues are surrounding their stay in Ghana, it will be handled by the appropriate state institution, Parliament, in collaboration with the executive, to make sure that whatever we do, we live within the Committee of Nations and we do the right thing so that we do not trample on the rights of any individual. We are not an island, we are not an oasis, we are just one in the midst of many nations. And we need to respect individual rights as enshrined in international agreements and also in our own constitution. So that at the end, as a nation, what we are clamoring for, to ensure that we've tried to protect the fundamental rights of individuals and persons who live in our geography, that particular principle is not negotiated away.
I find it quite surprising that you are Deputy Attorney General 1 year down the line, handing over notes were presented to you, and you don't seem to have any information at all about this particular matter. Does it not concern you? Does it not worry you?
No, you see, I would like to put things in perspective that I cannot, when I sit before the set, throw out pieces of information that are untrue or they remain in the realms of conjecture and etc., because that will be unprofessional. And that is why I indicated right from
but
the
you
onset
go handing over notes.
that particular piece of information is unavailable to me.
Okay.
I have spoken about the fact that it's unavailable to me. Does not mean that it doesn't exist.
Okay. So you have
It
not
may
seen
be,
it?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
And I would not want to speak to a document I haven't seen. You know, because I cannot come here and pretend to know everything that I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't speak well of you, and I will not say so. But what I have said is that whatever legal regime exists for us to actually ensure that we, protect the rights of these individuals who are living here, who had been brought into the country earlier before even this government came into office, should be done. You know, government is a continuum, and once one particular government did a particular thing as far as an agreement.
Are your hands really tied in terms of their refugee status and whether or not they must go? The last time we accepted the 2-year minis, we're told that it was on a note of compassion. Do you still have compassion?
Well, quite frankly, whatever we have now will have to be a negotiation between the state and then the two individuals.
The Foreign Affairs Minister said your hands are tied by the arrangement of the previous government. Are your hands tied in your view as Deputy Attorney General?
You see, my brother, I want to put things again in perspective. If you look at the history, when we came into office and the fact that the previous government had some arrangements with the American government to receive these two individuals into this country, it raised a lot of brouhaha. There was a furore. Even there was a matter that had to go to the apex court itself. And there was a definite pronouncement by that particular court, which there's no review to it, that indeed the circumstances surrounding their coming into this particular country and the way it was done was shrouded in mystery and secrecy. And that that particular agreement, which led to their stay in this particular country, ought to have done in a better manner to ensure that their stay in Ghana was legal. Indeed, immediately after that particular decision was taken, Parliament, which represents the interests of the people of this particular country, took up the matter and regularized their stay. Now that the 2 years have actually come to expire, what is going to happen next is that their status will be decided between government and those people. That will be through some kind of negotiation and discussion.
The Foreign Minister was emphatic in Parliament on the floor. She says your hands are tied.
Absolutely.
Are your hands tied, in your opinion, from a legal perspective? Are hands tied?
No, what I can say is that, you see, if anything ought to be done about the matter, it ought to be done by the people's representatives. And the people's representatives are the members of Parliament.
But you would take a proposal to them?
Yes, absolutely. It is the executive that ought to do that. But again, I have stated this and mindful of that, and I do not want to contradict myself today or ever, that as a group of people who live among the Committee of Nations, we ought to be careful and circumspect in whatever decisions we take. Because if we rush to undo what had been done by a previous government, when we know we live in the Committee of Nations...
You're speaking in parables, Honorable. I'm asking a direct question. Are your hands tied?
I have told you that the previous government entered into an arrangement. We have come into governance. What we ought to do is that if what happened by the previous government is an illegality, what we need to do is to regularize it. And Parliament did by a decision of the court. So by that decision and the fact that the agreement had earlier been entered into, and until we decide as a nation otherwise, for now, the status quo ought to be sustained.
Let me ask you finally, the U.S. ambassador has made some statements, I'm sure you heard them. Are you surprised by his statements? That he is surprised at the refugee status and all of that? Are you surprised yourself?
Well, I will say that to a very large extent, yes, I am. Because again, whatever arrangements were entered into, as a diplomat and a representative of the people of America here on our soil, there's no doubt about the fact that he knew or ought to have known. And so if he's now coming up to indicate that any status that they have today beats his imagination and etc., it surprises me. Because again, if the agreement that led to their coming into Ghana expires and will have to do any other thing that will regularize their stay without due prejudice to their rights as enshrined in international law and agreements, we ought to do that. So it comes as a surprise that, that such an emphatic statement was indeed made. But again, we are very cautious. We are a government that believes in the rule of law, and we will make sure that we do everything according to the spirit and letter of our constitution and the legal regime governing such agreements.
Do you have compassion? Does your government have compassion?
We do have. There's no doubt about that.
And on humanitarian grounds, you retain them.
Absolutely, we do have that compassion. And if national security considerations and etc. and all that we will take into consideration and put into place, we come into one conclusion that their stay is not injurious to our national security and etc. On grounds of compassion, why not? We can't have them.
I thank you. Theo, take a bite on this particular one quickly, and then let's move on to the conversation.
Thank you very much, and let me say good morning to your viewers. Well, first of all, let me commend the Deputy Minister for his frankness on this issue. But most of the information he's not privy to, and therefore will not be in the position to reveal exactly what's therein in.
Is it normal?
Yeah, I'll that's why I'm bringing this issue. You see, as a country, our leaders owe us a responsibility to ensure that as and when information is needed, information will be given to us. But if you understand how in our democracy, how things work, you will understand what my current minister is talking about. You see, sometimes, for me, our understanding of deputy ministerial appointments in this country needs to be looked at. And I believe that when ministers and deputy ministers are being taken through refresher courses, our state actors should ensure that ministers assign specific roles to deputy ministers. Because no matter what, when there's time for information sharing, your deputy minister also has a role to play. And these things have traveled, in fact, throughout governments, where deputy ministers lack information simply because sometimes ministers are not ready to even share the information or the knowledge that they have with deputy ministers. So for me, I understand where he is coming from. But on this issue of the Gitmo people, for me, I believe that a new government is in place.
Did you tie the hands of the current government?
I'm not sure. No, government's hands cannot be tied. But as he rightly said, we are a community of nations, and therefore you treat others the way you want to be treated. And so therefore, what previous governments have done, you also have to look at it and see how possible best to either continue or discontinue. The ball lies in the court of the current government. Per the information that we have now, we've been told that even their refugee status by the end of July should have ended.
Right.
So government has so many opportunities to employ, whether to let them continue staying in the country or finding other ways for them to depart this country. But even the American president has again told us yesterday that he wants the Guantanamo Bay to be reinstated.
Right.
And therefore, if the current government thinks that once that setup is being reinstated, they can just tell the U.S. government that, look, your government has now decided that we want Guantanamo Bay to be reinstated. And so therefore, once you have your
that's not so easy to do.
Well, that is what
to the extent that nobody tells us openly that the U.S. government supports our budget and other initiatives. So we are taking them on that score. We do know that these things do happen, and that because of support we get from the U.S., we are unable to tell them in the face that we can't do this. No, is it that easy?
You see, that is why he said, per the Community of Nations that we all belong, there are certain rules and regulations. And as a country, we cannot violate those rules and regulations. Once we've accepted them, there are responsibilities that needs to be fulfilled. We know the U.S. government is taking care of them in terms of their feeding, whatever, and resources are being made available. But as to what government is getting out of this process, the previous government didn't tell us. The current government has also not told the good people of this country. And this is the more reason why the right to information bill needs to be passed into law. For me, I'm totally disappointed as to what is happening to
What is happening?
the RTI.
What is happening?
You know, in the last parliament, we nearly passed that bill.
We went very close.
Exactly. But the minority ensured that that thing did not see the light of day. Now, we were promised that they want to ensure that that bill is passed in their first year in office. I quite remember the Minister for Information told the good people of this country that, look, by September last year, the right to information bill would have been passed into law.
Absolutely. That's
I came here and told the good people of this country that, look, the passage of that law does not lie in the minister's mouth to say, because it is Parliament that determines what needs to be done. But if you come and you tell the good people of this country in that manner, they are going to hold you accountable. And today, as we are seated here, we are in the second year.
right.
January is ending today.
Right.
And the right to information bill has not been passed.
Who is
into
stalling
law.
it now? Is it a majority or a minority?
Currently, the government has not laid the bill in Parliament.
Honorable.
So it is the government that is not willing
let's-
to ensure that the right to information bill is passed into an act.
But that will be contrary to what the president and the minister have said. Honorable,
It's not within Parliament.
kindly clarify this for us quickly. Is it true that you have not laid the RTI before Parliament proposal?
Of course, but if it is late, even it will be reported.
Exactly.
I mean, this is not
Exactly.
an ordinary. In any case, but I would like to have a very quick response to what the Honorable Teshike just said. You see, the issue of the last Parliament,
Right.
I'm not too sure whether it was the minority that said it should not be passed. That conclusion you arrived at, I think it is inappropriate. You see, we want to have a bipartisan approach to this particular thing.
Okay.
And then we arrive at a near unanimity in what we are doing. But you should ask yourself, what is the reason, the fundamental reason why it could not be passed in the last Parliament? It certainly could not have been as a result of the minority's inability, because they had the numbers anyway. You see, what I think we should be doing is that as a nation, and I will agree with him on that leg, we need to fast track the process of passing it in order to ensure that we access information and make it readily available to the good people of the country. He has rightly said it, and I agree with him again on the score that if the previous government had actually indicated very clearly the terms and conditions and agreement as far as the Gitme 2 are concerned, we would not have been alarmed and all that. But it was shrouded in some kind of mystery and secrecy, you know. And so I think that, fast forward, what we need to do as a nation is to ensure that we put in place a mechanism to ensure that we pass this RTI.
Do we know if the proposal is ready to be put before Parliament? Because I remember the last time we had a few issues with some of the clauses in there. Have those loose ends been knotted, and
I think,
when
that
are we
I
presenting?
think that the drafting unit is looking at all that. But again, what is even intriguing is that at the last Parliament, as he indicated, it was almost passed.
Right.
But just at the last minute, hitches came in and it could not be passed. So the current Parliament is determined to pass it. But it has to come to the House before.
Absolutely.
And so for now, you cannot hold Parliament responsible for the non-passage because it hasn't come. Again, it hasn't come because government is looking at trying to fix the knots.
Right.
And then make sure that we don't pass the law, get the assent and all that, and within the next moment we are calling for amendments. You understand what I'm talking about? We have to be careful and circumspect in what we do. Otherwise, what we are going to do is that we're going to run, and with the greatest respect, we're going to run a concept party show. We do one thing, the next moment we are crying, and we're going to do another, the next moment we are crying. So we have to take our time.
Do we have
so that we come
timelines?
out with a final product. I just believe, and it's deep in me, that in the course of this particular year, they will be brought
Do
to
we have
Parliament.
timelines? You say that the drafting office is not yet rounded up its work. Do we have
You
timelines?
see, the
for that?
drafting office timelines, no. But the drafting office, when everything is ready, it will certainly be sent back to cabinet for
Right.
them to have a look at it before it comes back to Parliament and all that. But what I can assure you of is that in the course of the year, I know that it will be introduced, and then we will have a very, very,
So
very
so
good
what
debate.
happened to the promise for September, as Honorable Mustafa Amida told all of us that by September it was going to be passed? He sits in cabinet as well.
That's my big brother, and I think that I don't speak for him, but I believe that there may be reasons why it could not happen, and maybe if you reach him, he will be able to clarify. And I can tell you that he had good intentions when he said so. He had very good intentions, and he was very sure of what he was talking about. But as you know, governance, as a result of circumstances that you cannot fathom, certain things may occur that will derail a particular promise.
I'm curious, Honorable, though, that we knew where the loopholes were, what not had to be held. So clearly, it can't take us a whole year to fix the questions that were raised. Sometimes perhaps is it beyond my layman's view?
See, sometimes a fundamental question can be raised about an issue that will even take you more than a year to resolve. You know, so I don't want us to be looking too much at the time limits and etc. What I want to look at is the fact that we should make sure that it is passed.
Okay.
That's very important.
So
it's
September we will get it passed?
I don't want to give you any date.
October?
So that you hold me to it tomorrow.
November.
I will not be giving you any date.
You know I hold people to it, right?
Yes, I know. I know.
The media. I believe that on this issue, the good people of this country will hold the media responsible for not pushing government enough to ensure that this right to information bill is passed into law. Because look, the media, you set the agenda, you ensure that governments are held accountable. And the only way you can perform very, very well to enhance productivity of this country is to access information.
Right.
So the citizens of this country are ready to support the media to ensure that you push government harder.
I must say that the GJA, led by President Afel-Moni, has been pushing for that. On that score, let me say good morning to Mr. Afel-Moni and remind him that we're solidly behind him, and also say that we need a coalition for this particular one, just like we did for the Galamsey. The government picked on it. The coalition that we've talked about must kickstart its operation so that we can get this done nicely. Okay, so I had wanted us to talk about PRC, but let's talk about Martin Amedu quickly before we get to PRC. He faces Parliament on the 13th of February. Honourable Council, let me start with you on this one. Good news?
Oh, absolutely. It's a step in the right direction, and you know we are moving very close to fulfilling a major campaign promise and etc. It's very important to put this in perspective that when we're drafting this particular law, it was a very, very, very nice and lovely debate from both sides of the House as to ensure that we have this particular law in place. And now that we have the law in place, we have to move the next step to get the officers in place so that work will commence. And remember that there are, certain pieces of information wrongdo out there sometimes that he's coming to take over the work of the Attorney General. That is not. It's just a fraction of the work of the Attorney General that will go to him.
Perhaps because the thing is not properly explained.
Yes, I'm very, very sure about that. You see, the Attorney General, if you look at the Criminal and Other Offences Act, there are more than 400 to 500 offences, and in other laws, we do everything. But this one, he's coming to look at specific aspects of our law, and it relates squarely to politically exposed persons, you know, corruption and corruption-related offences only. So the many other hundreds of offences will still be within the purview and jurisdiction of the Attorney General. And remember also that most of these cases will be referred to the special prosecutor by the Attorney General, and that was because if you look at the current legal regime, in order not to act in an unconstitutional manner, one has to be cautious so that you don't sin against the provisions of Article 88. You get what I'm talking about. So in order to do that, we fashioned the law in such a way that, yes, the Attorney General will not be controlling the day-to-day activities of the special prosecutor, but there will be some collaboration to ensure that prosecutions are carried. And, you know, it is going to relate specifically to corruption and corruption-related offenses, and then politically exposed persons and political persons, people who hold public office and all that. So I would like to say that I wish the indefatigable Honorable Martin Alamisi Amidu well, and I wish him well in the vetting. I know that it will be fireworks because both sides of the house are prepared to grill him and to hand that weapon to him to see that at least in the next 3 years before the elections, whether or not the fight against corruption will be taken to another level. You know, the fear of God will be in people. Of course, everybody,
which people?
Politicians particularly, the fear of God will be in us. Because, you know, if you watched carefully, and I did, I observed carefully the response of social media to the appointment of the Honorable Martin Amidu, you know, and I was excited. I was really thrilled by the way the assessment was. There was a near unanimity as to the fact that the man is the person we need at this particular time to handle that aspect. And I would like to congratulate His Excellency the President for the nomination that had actually come from our office for him to actually nominate before Parliament comes in. So look at the strand, you know. The Attorney General makes a proposal to the President who appoints the person. Parliament then does the vetting, the people's representatives, so that it doesn't become an institution of witch hunting. And that is, again, if you look at he has a 7-year mandate.
Right. From
the day he was sworn in. So, I mean, it straddles beyond just 4 years, where your tenure of office is conterminous with that of the President as ministers. You know, it's not going to be like that. So that particular independence that he requires to do his work, and you know, he's one person that nobody can push, and that is one of the factors that led to that nomination. That we do not want a person who will be put there and can't be manipulated. And he's one character who would not be subject to manipulation by any external force. And for a government to show true and genuine commitment to fighting this cancerous canker in our society, then you need such a person in place who cannot be pushed around by people anyhow to carry out his work.
What do you say to the public sentiment that, look, if you really are determined to fight corruption, then you will have the Right to Information Bill passed, which would let people then have access to information and to take it to Mr. Martin Amidu. Then timelines again coming. 13 February, he's been vetted, subsequent approval. So maybe by the end of February, he would have been approved. He will start work. We're also talking about funding. But Right to Information Bill then comes up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just discussed that. I agree with you that, I mean, if at the end of it all, he's in office and then information is not forthcoming, or the needed information for investigations to go on is not forthcoming and people are not teasing up. But remember, he has compelling powers by the act. He has powers to compel you.
But are we getting the same urgency with which he was appointed? Because if you look at the timeline, he was appointed earlier this year.
Yes.
He's ready to face Parliament, and then his office is set up, and then he starts work immediately.
Absolutely.
The Right to Information Bill has been there since Adam. And it doesn't look like
that. One other thing I want you to understand, and I know that, I mean, you are very much aware of it, is that it could have even been passed long before this government came into office.
But now you are in power.
You know, I want to put that in perspective so that it doesn't seem as though this particular thing fell from heaven on the first day of January
but that is
2017.
And that's why I said it's been there since Adam.
Yes.
But now you say you have commitment to fight corruption.
We are committed and determined to pass it. And I'm saying that, take my word, if in 2020 it is not passed, you can say that we failed to fulfill a promise.
We moved from 2017 to 2018.
No,
now we're going to 2020.
No, I'm saying that is the period within which we have to govern until we have the next election. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I'm saying that we have a 4-year mandate. If after the 4-year mandate we do not pass it, then at that stage you can come to one conclusion and one only, that we failed to do it. But I can assure you that before that mandate expires,
your earlier promise was before 2018 ends. Your earlier promise on this platform.
Yes, I have indicated. I'm just giving you a broader perspective. And you know, Johnny, I got you from the beginning that you were trying to pin me into saying certain things.
No, I can't.
So you can record me, and the next moment you will say that Deputy Attorney General came here and told me that in September it was going to be passed. I haven't said so.
I
have said that it will be passed, but I haven't given you any timelines. And I believe
you said by the
that
close of this year. You said by the close of this year. That was what you said.
No.
He said by the close of this year.
I think that, Johnny.
No, but
you see, I love your style, but unfortunately, what is important for us to look at, and on a more serious note, that law is a necessity.
Right.
You know why it has not been passed? You see, one thing that is clear is that once it is passed and there are no limits and statutory protections, it can also boomerang in our faces. I can tell you this. There must be some statutory checks to ensure that it is not abused. Otherwise, nobody will be able to do any work.
So every morning there will be a lineup. If we know what the problems are, let's put the remedies in the law.
I'll be very honest with you, because otherwise you get up very early in the morning and your office is inundated with long queues, people seeking information and all that. It's possible. And if you don't give, you are going to be running contrary to principles of law, and there will be penal consequences that will be exacted. So we need to balance it to ensure that we don't create a monster of a law that will come to haunt us.
I hear you. Thank you, Theo.
You see,
Martin Avidu faces the committee 30th.
Yeah, for me, his appointment will not be complete without the passage of the Right to Information Bill into an act. Reasons being that it will be very difficult for that office to just start prosecuting just like that. Definitely, it needs some form of lead. And we know the media play a very critical role in giving leads. So for me, Mr. President has a Herculean task to ensure that by the time Parliament approves the nomination of Honorable Martin Amidu as the special prosecutor, the Right to Information Bill must also be passed into law. Look, over the years, this law has gone through a lot of amendments.
Right. And
the state at which it was before we left, in fact, it has been, let me say, about 90 or 99% clean up. You quite remember the last, when it was brought before the House, so many amendments. In fact, per the history of Parliament, it has been one bill that has brought into the House that has incurred a lot of amendments. But Parliament had a time, I quite remember the previous speaker, ensured that we sat on that bill. So the last minute that it was not passed.
Some say the politicians themselves are afraid of their own shadows. So.
And that is the more reason why the media needs to put pressure on government. Because look, we cannot be accountable, or we cannot make this office successful if people will not be given the right to access information. Because look, we are all praising the work that Honorable Martin Amidu is coming to do.
Right.
But look, in this country, when people get into office, sometimes things change.
What changes?
The expectation sometimes changes. So if we don't have checks and balances to ensure that, look, when people are sleeping on the job, there are other checks and balances that can put them to work, and that is the media. Because if the office is to set up now and the office become ineffective, it is the media that will make that office effective. Because you are going to send in reports, you are going to send in allegations or things that you've investigated in this country. Look, almost all the big scandals that occur in this nation, it is the media. So it tells you the power of the media. And that is why, Mr. President, within the shortest possible time, this Right to Information Bill must be brought back to Parliament to be assented into law.
What timelines do you have in mind?
In fact, before the end of the first quarter, this thing needs to be done. Because this thing has been cleaned up over the years. And what is left to be done is not something that demands so much work. So if government is really committed in fighting corruption, then the appointment of Martin Amidu should also be in contemporaneous with the right to information bill passed into law.
Your thoughts and comments, as always, on WhatsApp 050-823-5228. That's 050-823-5228. Join the conversation. We're big on your comments. We'd like to read from you. Now, the PRC started review of utility tariffs. This comes on the back of the president's announcement out there earlier in the year that tariffs have been reduced. Joe, some say the president jumped the gun, and this may be problematic because already we've had a body that's the African Center for Energy Policy as well. They have criticized the president for jumping the gun. But here we are again faced with utility tariff. It could go up, it could come down. They're expecting proposals from the public. What do you say?
Well, His Excellency the President did not jump the gun. He's the #1 citizen of this country. There's no doubt about that. He's the chief executive of the country. He's been given the mandate by the good people of this particular country to govern, and he's supposed to engage in acts that will cushion the good people of this country of any suffering that will be brought on them as a result
without
of
recourse to the
certain policies. Yes, he has to do that with close collaboration with all the state actors and institutions. There's no doubt about that. And you have not provided with a shred of evidence that whatever he said, he did not actually have the consent or he did not have any discussion with PURC. Nobody has provided with any such piece of information. I think that utilities are very important in our lives, and they influence us for the better or for worse. And there's no doubt about the fact that as a result of this particular position that we are in, we will need intervention from the top. You know, of course, the president was voted to make life better for Ghanaians, and steps he's taking are meant to make life better for Ghanaians. So you may question it in any way, but you have to look at it within the context of his mandate, and he acted within the context of his mandate. And remember, as a lawyer, that even the very first time he was answering a question regarding this, or speaking to the nation regarding this, he was very cautious. He said that when it is put before PURC for approval and it is done, ABCD will be done for the people. The first time he spoke to the media, he was extra cautious about that. He did not just announce it that it is taking effect. He said when it is put before the PURC and it is accepted, this is what is going to happen. As an astute lawyer, he said so. Again, you've talked about the PURC and the utilities and all that, whether or not it will go up or be reduced.
Right.
That they are asking for memoranda and submissions from the public to be able to guide them, because they don't want to do it in draconian manners, or they just, as a result of the fact that they have the mandate, they just do it in a manner that suits them without due consultation with the public. Otherwise, remember that it can backfire in their faces. If you come out with anything that is not in the spirit of the good of the people, there can be protest. You know, exercising our rights in tandem with our constitution and etc. Things can happen in a manner that will be beyond what you actually anticipated when you were carrying out a particular thing. So let the public participate. Let them have a say. Let them have their contributions. And at the end, you come to a very realistic conclusion, and then send out pieces of information to the public, educate them, let them know why it ought to come down or go up. And when the explanation goes down well with the people and you implement the policy, there is no protest. And that's exactly what they are doing.
We are rationing water now, and then this PURC issue comes up. I'm looking at the public and what their reactions will be.
I'm getting there. I even wanted to, I would have been surprised if we didn't talk about this important point. You see, I made a point here, I don't know whether it was on this platform or another, that the way we're moving as a nation previously, if we didn't take care, we're getting close to committing suicide, mass suicide. And I was talking about the activities of galamseyers.
Right.
And how it polluted our waters and destroyed our water bodies. And the fact that experts had even said that if we didn't take care, in a few years we're going to be importing water and all that. Again, we have a situation where the rainfall pattern has been erratic and irregular. And as a result of that, most of the water bodies have dried up, and etc. And so water rationing, if it has happened in some parts of the country, becomes a necessity. You know, if you go to my part of the world, the north, at this time of the year, driving here, I listened to quite a number of radio stations, and people were somebody even talked about the fact that he visited the north and then he returned recently, and the place was so dried up. It's a fact. That's why the implementation of policies such as the one village, one dam, which is commencing very soon, ought to be done with all the speed to ensure that we have
those
water.
promises before 2-3 times already.
I can assure you that I can assure you that this one I can speak on authority, even authoritatively, that far-reaching steps have been taken.
So when is it starting? When exactly?
I am not able to tell you tomorrow or the next day, but I can tell you that within the month of March, April, I mean, construction will start. There's no doubt about that. I can tell you that one you can hold me to it within the month of March, April.
I'll hold you. We'll play it for you. But, so you were talking about the drought in the north.
Yes, there's so much drought. And so, what happens when the rains start? June, July, August, September. We are not able to harvest the water. So at the end of it, the dry season, we have a very dry place. People are not able to have water and all that. And a lot of the parts of the country, we have problems with water bodies drying up and etc. That's why we ought to do everything possible to help the government fight this canker of Galamsey, to protect our water bodies and ensure that posterity has something good for us. Otherwise, my brother, look, I watched a clip, and till date, I'm still being haunted and hunted by it. The clip, 2 different countries, 2 rivers, different rivers, and you had a drone picture of the 2. One of them was so beautiful, in fact, at the state of nature, and the other one had been destroyed beyond, almost beyond recovery. And I realized that the other river they were talking about was a very popular one in Ghana. And the other one was in China. And I saw that the person who did it, he had a few Chinese standing by both sides. You know, at their place, this is how they have allowed their water to look like. Those of them who have found their way here, this is how they have influenced ours to look like. And when people talk about it, then others say that there's unemployment. So if there's unemployment, we engage in activities that will cause us to commit suicide. Please. So I would like to plead with all of us. We should take the destiny of our nation into our own hands, not leave it in the hands of a few political class people. Look, if there is no water, it affects all of us. So it is incumbent on all of us to ensure that we protect our water bodies so that at least in the years to come, what we came to meet, if we cannot improve it at all, we should leave it the way it is for our generations unborn to enjoy, not destroy it in the name of business and etc. So I will say that, yes, PURC, they should engage the public, they should engage consumers, and let us all contribute so that they can come out with those realistic prices that we will all accept and move on as a people.
If what the president said is perhaps what the PRC had come in agreement to implement by what you've said, then if the public presents a proposal which is contrary, what will be the purpose of that proposal?
No, okay, you see the point is that you are engaging the public, and His Excellency the President has made a particular commitment. If you engage the public and you realize that the overwhelming majority of the people come to a certain conclusion, perhaps contrary to what His Excellency has said, His Excellency the President, as a listening father, can always change his mind if he realizes that the overwhelming majority of the people are going a certain direction.
So on what basis did the President make the promise if he didn't feel the sentiments of the people at first?
He felt it. But as I have indicated, I mean, memoranda hadn't been submitted. People hadn't, as PURC has actually now asked for. I mean, those ones can come in and influence and shape the, going forward. No doubt about that. But he took that decision as a father because he looked at the mood of the people at a particular point in time and said that, look, there's a need to cushion them. And cushioning them will mean that you act in a manner as to ensure that the burden on the people is reduced. And that's what His Excellency the President sought to do.
So let me come to you now. The President, in speaking to the hairdressers and the barbers, he said that those who use non-residential meters, we're going to get the tariff reduction. In fact, it was specific. But you and I know, even where you live, your constituency, Ablekuma Central, most of the hairdressers and whatnot, they use residential meters. Sometimes it is my meter that I have a sister who runs a barber's shop or a hairdressing shop, and she comes to tap from it. How do they benefit from any of this? And tie that in with the PRC's review of tariffs that's coming up.
Thank you very much. You see, His Excellency the President assumed a responsibility that he was not supposed to assume.
He's the first gentleman of the land.
But that is not his responsibility to fix tariffs. Okay? It is the responsibility of PURC to work with the various stakeholders to ensure that tariffs are fixed. Now, I've always said that what government can only do is to maybe use its tax component to support the citizenry. So if the president comes out to tell the good people of this country that, look, out of the various taxes on the tariffs, government is taking off its percentage in terms of tariffs. That one, nobody can blame the president because it is government that determines what he has to put on the charges that we pay for developmental purposes. Okay, but government has not assumed that responsibility. The responsibility government has assumed is giving us how much we are going to pay. That is the president. And that is why the minority and other civil society groups have come out to condemn the president for assuming a responsibility that he was not supposed to assume.
He's feeling the sentiments of the people.
Look. Then what is the essence of PURC? Now telling the public that we should bring in our input. Input for what? The #1 gentleman of the land has given us the rates.
They're following procedure Act 538.
Hold on, I know.
1997.
Didn't the president know this? Didn't the president know this? So, per what the president has done, all of us are expecting that we are going to get a tax reduction, a tariff reduction of 13% per consumers. The president has even gone further to give classifications. So, in fact, the president is currently, in quote, the head of PURC. He has gone further to give how much hairdressers are going to pay in terms of percentage, how much barbers are going to pay in terms of percentage, how much seamstress, beauticians and so on are going to pay. So Mr. President has assumed that responsibility. So for us as a people, our inputs have already been taken up.
But the PURC can change its mind.
Didn't the president know this before telling the hairdressers that this is how much they are going to pay? Didn't the president know?
Was it wrong?
It was wrong. It was wrong. And that is why civil society groups condemned the president for assuming that responsibility. Now, you are calling stakeholders to come to the table. For what? The government has already assumed how much we are supposed to pay. And no citizen of this country will be willing to pay anything more than what the president brought to the fore. Now, the question also one needs to ask is, how are the hairdressers, the barbers, the beauticians, how are their tariffs going to be taken on board? Because as you rightly know, most of these institutions or small SMEs operate in houses. They operate in homes. They use the same, household meters. So is it that when I take my prepaid card, when I get to the vendor, I tell the vendor that I'm a barber, and therefore a calculation can be done for me, and that cannot be done because the software of ECG will not allow the vendor to manipulate.
It recognizes the meter number, whether it's domestic or commercial.
No, but the question is, all this group of people are operating in homes. So how are they going to benefit? Didn't the president know this? He's been a tenant. He's also rented before. We've all rented before. So we know.
We don't know that the president has rented before.
Come on.
I don't know.
Come on. Even if he has not, that is why he has energy ministers, he has deputy ministers, he has people that
have rented before.
Well, maybe they have never rented before. They were born with silver spoons in their mouth. But a typical Ghanaian will tell you that, Mr. President, what you are saying, implementation will be very challenging, because most of these barbers are all operating in homes.
The Attorney General thinks otherwise.
I'm not sure. He's nodding.
Well,
he's in agreement.
He says the PRC, I mean, if PRC receives the proposals and they think that, well, the public are expressing a certain sentiment, they will look at it again.
No, but you see, let us be real. Let us be real.
Just 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll give you.
Or even less than that.
Okay.
You see, when life is difficult in Ghana, the citizens don't blame PURC. I'll leave it there.
Does that
You
give,
see, they put the blame on the government led by the president.
Does that give
So
the
he has to
president
provide
the
leadership.
impetus
He
to,
has to provide leadership,
is
please.
that not why PRC has a head to take the decisions?
Absolutely, but remember that ultimate responsibility for decisions as to the welfare of this country lies in the president, who swore an oath to do same. He cannot.
Hold on. You see,
Sit down and then look at
you see-
situations get out of hand, and look, his action point to a particular thing that it violates.
You see,
And I told you that he was cautious,
No,
whatever he said.
you
He said, when PURC finally accepts, this is what will happen.
look,
He was cautious.
Honorable,
As a lawyer.
Honorable.
Yes.
He's the #1 gentleman of the land. He has to share our concerns.
Yeah.
But the sharing of our concerns should be within the law. Okay? If the president had told us that, look, this is what I'm trying to do, we sent proposals to the PURC to work something out. It ends there. Okay? But to the extent of quoting how much in terms of percentage I have to pay, it means you are doing their work. So PURC cannot come out and tell the good people of this country that, look, per what the president said, after doing the calculations, especially from the stakeholders, that thing cannot be implemented. The good people of this country will hold the president accountable.
I want us to look at
And we should not descend into that realm of
I want to look
politics.
at a very last lap of this conversation before we read some messages. There's the growing concern of illegal connection for both water and electricity, wastage in terms of pipe bursts and the rest, and all those things perhaps go into feeding into the concept of cost of production, as we're told every now and then. Because if the water is produced and left to gush out and nobody responds to it in a timely manner, if electricity is connected or water is connected illegally, it feeds into the production. Can we then hold the PURC to charge the utility companies to say, you can't come with price hikes every now and then when you have not kept your house in order? Can we do that?
You see, that is the reasons why this thing should have been left with the PURC. So that stakeholders will also bring in their input. And then based on the inputs and whatever calculations that needs to be done, acceptable tariff adjustments can be made. PURC, as we know over the years, continuously sometimes surcharge ECG, or Ghana Water Company Limited, for some of this
in fact, recently,
excessive misuse of the resources.
In fact, recently in Accra West, Achimota, Kolebu, Kaneshi, they've asked that they be compensated.
Exactly. So these are things that occasionally they do. But you see, a lot of what is going on also rests with government.
Okay.
How we continuously plan this nation. You see, governance is a continuous type of thing. And I've always said that, look, whatever you meet from your previous government, you should also have a projection of increasing.
Right.
Because population is increasing, the economy is also growing, production is going up. And therefore, a lot of attention or pressure will be on the utilities, electricity, water, and housing. So government should have a plan where every year some sort of additions can be made. And I think that is the challenge we are facing now. And I believe that government really needs to look at what it has to do to increase water supply. Because our problem is not the availability, the unavailability of water. The problem is the distribution, storage of the treated water, and then distribution. So all what we need to do is to invest into more storage facilities so that water can be treated in Pong, water can be treated at the Weja basin to be able to circulate
I'm
throughout
looking
the
at
country.
even residential areas like Ridge, for example, Ringway Estates, that used to be purely residential. Now you go there, there are high-rise buildings, and you're wondering what capacity has been added to the water distribution that goes there. Same with electricity. So nobody seems to care. I mean,
yeah, and that's the more reason why we need to
check out some of your messages here, out here. It's generated a lot, yeah? But I've enjoyed the conversation myself. Says, good morning, TV3, NewDay. Hey, Mr. President, can you fight corruption when your ruling family and friends government, you appointed IGP, he couldn't arrest anybody. You appointed AG, she couldn't prosecute anybody. Martin Amidu cannot do anything. This man is not to be trusted. Chia Osman Brukison in Tamale. Good morning. Nanado and his government should up. This is not the change Ghanaians voted for. The whole country, no ink to print health insurance cards. Oh my God. Adam Yendi. Good morning, TV3. Please, I want to find out from the Deputy Attorney General when the LI of the Mental Health Act will be passed so we can get guaranteed feeding for mental health in the country. The patients are suffering and it seems no one cares. Azari David Bazwa, Upper East. Chief, I'll come for you for an answer. Good morning, Johnny Hughes and the panelists. I want to suggest to our MPs that the questions they are going to ask Mr. Masanamidu should be straightforward answers. Okay, Oscar, George, Solo, you don't want them to be asking what would you do differently. Eh? Okay, MPP, Allah would save us from this incompetent government. Fuel price hikes, Tikuma in Tamale Central. Abdul Basit in Zongo, Pania Komasi says, good morning, I'm happy we have a listening and able president. Now we can register our local names with birth and death registry. Tariffs are reduced, free SHS and VAT 3% flat rate is back again. Not only 17.5 across board, and civil and public sector wage increased by 11%. We thank Alaji Boniface for another AstroTurf stadium in Medina, Libyan quarters. Thank you also. Good morning, Johnny and your panelists. In fact, Honorable Kmemka is a seasoned lawyer. No amount of tricks can prevent him from making his points. From Osman Bog. Good morning, TV3. Martin Amidu is going to do a good job. Please, Mr. Amidu should deal with both politicians and the rest. Corruption is everywhere in Ghana, not only with politicians. I believe Parliament will do a good job with respect to the vetting. I hope it will be aired for all to view at home. We'll be bringing you snippets of that. Good morning. On the Right Information Bill, please tell the MPP MP that the only way to progress is to set achievable timelines. Blanketly stating that by the end of 4 years is an insult. Will they set 4 years timelines to increase their salary? Good morning, TV3. The ratification of the Gitmo 2 alone is a commendable sense of humor by a government that respects rule of law. The refugee status granted a pair was just unfortunate, but we must respect our bilateral agreements with other countries. Pegla, Junior, and Wa. Good morning, TV3. The RTI bill will certainly be passed into law before the next general elections in this country. This Nanado Baumia Group administration is poised to fight corruption, and the RTI bill is step closer to fighting corruption. Okay, we want timelines, not promises. Cornelius, the Deputy Attorney General, is not on top of issues. He needs to be serious. Oh, are you sure? Good morning, Johnny Hughes. These politicians have taken Ghanaians for granted. It's high time they stop being selfish and think about Ghanaians as a whole. Ferguson from Latibia Koshi. Utility tariffs can only be expected to go down under the leadership of MPP. I don't think we should be discussing this at all. Ghanaians are still waiting for one district, one factory. Mosey from Ashaman. Good morning to my former English master at Waku Secondary School, Pemka Joseph. I'm grateful and proud of you. Afayak Awudu from Boku. He's no longer in the classroom. He's in Parliament and at the Attorney General's Department. I'm sure it's one of the reasons we don't have teachers in the classroom. From Kakeku, good morning, TV3. So the Deputy Attorney General is saying that due to diligence, that diligence must be done to ensure they don't act like concept party. Did the MPP do same concerning free SHS, which is now facing serious accommodation and funding challenge. Can we then conclude that this current MPP administration is hashtag concept party government? No wonder. Good morning, Johnny. Tell the Honorable Kpemka that he promised we, the people of Timpani, of a good road, and since he came to power, he has not said anything again. Please, the dust is killing us. We're waiting for you to come 2020. Akudugo David from Timpani constituency. Let's hope and pray that the PRC will fully implement directives given by the government to reduce electricity tariffs. Not until the directives are implemented, I will not be so loose to believe this after all they have done is to spare parts dealers. When it was announced they have reduced the import levy on their product, they still are crying. Alaji Wilipi in Efiekuma. And finally, Johnny, the political gimmicks played in this country is too much. How can the president announce reduction of tariffs and later the PRC comes around seeking for our input? Mr. President, please allow public institutions to do their work and stop forcing measures down their throat. God bless TV3. Alexander from Dansuma. But there's a quick one. Mental health. The bill. When are we seeing that quickly? I want an official position on that.
Asking me for date again.
Oh, I'm asking an official position.
The next time I'm here, I'll provide you with that definite timeline after I've cross-checked.
But do we know of this bill, of this particular one?
Yes, I know of it. And that's what I'm saying. I'll cross-check and give you the information the next time I'm here.
Okay.
But in response to...
The dust in your
the dust in fact, for the first time in the history of my constituency, 7 roads have been advertised. For the first time in the history of my constituency. 7 roads were advertised last year. They are due to be awarded.
In the budget?
Yes, they were advertised in the papers.
Okay.
For award. And the contractors bidded, they opened the bids. Okay. And then the awards will be next month. Okay. 7 roads for the first time in the history of my constituency.
So there's hope coming to
So what he's saying, in fact, has been effectively addressed.
I will call you on telephone and try and find out from you when the mental health thing will pass, so we can get food for the mental people. Yes, honorable.
Yeah, let me give my brother a word of advice. Yeah. What he needs to ensure is that when contractors move to site, they are adequately paid to do their job. Because it's not about moving to the site.
If not,
otherwise he will be in trouble. But you see, there's something that is happening in this country, especially on our ministers, that needs to be checked. Okay. When issues come up from some of these agencies under their care, it turned out that they are not aware. Okay. And for me, it is not a good sign.
Are you referring to the bets and debts registry?
Look, there are so many things that has happened over the 1 year that when ministers are called upon, they come to tell the public that they were not aware. But under our governance structure, if you are a minister, you are a deputy minister, institutions or agencies under your supervision needs to be critically looked at, especially issues of policy.
Do you think the work is being played with?
Look, it seems government needs to take some of our ministers through training.
Are you calling for a reshuffle by this?
Well, if government thinks it is not embarrassing, but for me, I think it is very embarrassing that a whole institution or agency under your watch takes a policy decision, and the minister comes out to say that he wasn't aware. It has happened with GBC, it has happened with DVLA, BEF, and so many institutions.
Are you calling for a reshuffle?
Well, if the president thinks they are being effective, he should maintain them. But the good people of this country have come to the realization that some of our ministers are not on top of the job.
Honorable Kpemka Joseph Dindioke is a member of parliament for Timpani, and he's also Deputy Attorney General. He's joined us on behalf of the MPP. Chief, thank you very much. And Honorable Theophilus Echai is a former member of parliament for the Ablekuma Central constituency. He is calling for a reshuffle, but he's not saying it in plain words. Sports is up next. Thierry Nyan is here. You should see he's going fat after this break.